We're going to call to order the Monday, July 21st, 2025 meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's do roll then. Taylor Van Dever. Brett Mansfield.
Here.
Will Haston.
Here.
Francie Mello.
Here.
Sandra Tuck.
Here.
Nelson Pratt.
Here.
Alex Bynum.
Here.
Dr. Mark Sunderman. Eric Robinson. Okay. Chair, we do have quorum, and you saw Mr. Bynum there, and some of you had the opportunity to be introduced to him. He is our new public member, so we're looking forward to having him on board. And it comes from a good stock. Apparently, his grandfather was on the board back at our Real Estate Commission, so here he is, a real estate appraiser, completing the circle. So we're welcome. We're glad to have you here, and look forward to your contribution. We've been out without a public member for a while, so we're glad to have you here. So don't go anywhere.
I'm glad y'all found a guinea pig.
Yeah, so throw whatever you want to at them. Let's just see how this rolls. Yeah. Okay, so we got notice of public comment period. That's located at the end of the agenda. We always do that right before we adjourn, and if there are no public comments, then of course the chair is free to adjourn at that point once we approve the agenda. So if there's anyone from the public either present or online, just sign in at the sheet here to my left if you're present, and then or sign on online if you want to be recognized during the public comment period. For the meeting notice of the July 21st, 2025 meeting of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission has been noticed on the website since September 25, 2024. This month's agenda was posted on July 14th, 2025. All right. The agenda, we just need to adopt it. Do we have any edits or any comments? Hearing none, we can accept a motion if we have one.
Motion to accept the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a
I
second? All right, got a motion from Mr. Haston, a second from Ms. Tuck. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that's approved. And Brett, I'll let you get back in the driver's seat. How about that? And
That sounds good. I think we're ready. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the April 21st meeting? Any edits? Just need a motion.
we do have one edit, if you don't mind. The agenda, I'd like to just have Nelson Pratt added to the list of those being present. So I realized he was omitted, so we want to make sure we put him, get an accurate recording of that. If we could just have that edit, so we would need a motion in that regard. My apologies, go ahead.
Motion to accept the April minutes, including the edit that Nelson Pratt was present.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Haston, a second from Mr. Van Dever.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, experience interviews. Let me get there myself. All right, and before I read the list, I do have one edit I'd like to add. Ms. Mello would like to add Robert Hamilton to the report for an upgrade to CG and then recommend approval. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mello, appreciate that. So let me read the rest then. Mr. Pratt, you had Ruth Lichtman for upgrade to CR, and the recommendation was yes for that one?
That is correct.
All right. Ms. Tuck, you had Sarah Bowers for upgrade to CR, and your recommendation was for approval as well?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Mr. Van Dever, Kirk Winberry, upgrade to CG, and your recommendation was for approval as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you for affirming that. And of course, Ms. Mello's upgrade as well. Unless we have any other amendments to that other than the addition, we'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, go ahead.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we are ready for the education report.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Sunderman with us today. Unfortunately, he had a death in the family, couldn't be with us. He tried to work that out, but obviously, given the circumstances, we wanted him to be with his family, and grateful his contribution. Of course, you saw the report. As always, he's very thorough, and his recommendation was for approval for the courses that were listed there. And so typically, he would make that motion. Without him being here, we'll just need to go through a regular vote like we would any other agenda item.
I want to make a motion.
I make a motion that we move to approve this.
Okay, we've got a motion.
Second.
Motion.
So it looks like we got a motion to approve from Ms. Tuck and then a second from Nelson Pratt to approve the education report. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then that was approved. Director's report, I just have a couple items that for informational purposes only. Of course, I welcome any questions that you may have and follow up, but there's no action items here present, just information purposes. So the budget, let me get there. At our last meeting in April, we received all the months of record available to us at the time. That was through February. As a result, we'll be focused primarily on the last 3 months of record. That's going to be March through May. And then, of course, our fiscal year will run through June. And so we'll wrap up this fiscal year. We'll have a nice little recap after they reconcile our accounts, and we'll know exactly where we're at. Just to sort of be the spoiler alert is we're in surplus at 15,000, so we're tracking at on the right track, and our trajectory is really good. We don't want to, obviously we're not in the business of collecting on reserves, and and we've got a pretty good reserve balance already, and so that's pretty good. I mean, we're right there about where we need to be, not dipping below the line and find ourselves in the red, but not just massively accruing our reserves either. So. Let me just put up, if I can pull out the things that I saw, and if you see anything and you would like to discuss that, we can. But typically, if I have questions about something, you probably did too, so I'll just address that first in the first pass. And if you see something, we can talk about that in a second. You will note a spike in expenses under other for March and April. If you look about midway through March and April, you'll see other about midway through expenses. And for the benefit of Mr. Bynum, let me just sort of do a quick little recap. This is basically a P&L chart, profits and losses. You saw that, yeah. And so with the balance sort of reconciling at the bottom, and then we do the trends with the year end over year, so you have like a quick snapshot of what you're looking at, and then the reserves there as well. And our revenues we are on the top side, and of course our expenses bottom. And Edison is we throw that around acronyms, or we refer to. Basically our ledger. That's where we settle a lot of our stuff electronically. A lot happens in Edison, but to include billing those items. And so then you've got the accounts over to the left. So midway down under other was a couple big charges. You notice we had one in February as well. February, March, and April. That's the ASC fees. The AMC panels where we're collecting that money, and then basically just a clearinghouse for them, and then that gets debited to us, and then we pay that back out. So we had a 57,500 registry fees in March and 42,000 ASC registry fees in April. So that's what that is. Now you'll see that that's already drying up. So that I think we're kind of in the clear for a while on that one. You may notice an increase in admin cost back charges for technology in April. This was for all the programs. This is a shared expense across all the programs in the division, and that was due to a current core contract. The payment was reflected for the 2025 calendar year. The invoice was not received until February of this year, and so it may have been delayed further due to contract negotiations. Basically, it was a gap contract until they inked the deal, extending them as our vendor for core, or as our continued vendor. There was a gap contract, and so that got debited and disbursed across all the programs proportionally. So that was our share of it. We expect future invoice to be received and processed in January of each year. The contract terms reflect a payment of 5 years, so and an option for year 6 and 7. So about a 3% increase on that contract year over year, which is pretty typical with any contract. And those were the big ticket items that I saw, which left us obviously in April, left us with a little bit of a deficit there due to that charge. And then, but we're tracking surplus and right about where we need to be. Does anything else that you saw, and if you have any questions after the fact, then just shoot me an email, and then I can, of course, dig in then if I need to. All right, with that, unless there's any other questions, then wanted to give you a quick ASC compliance review update. We do our biennial audit. We're a federal regulated program, the only one in the division that is federally regulated. So they come every 2 years, and it's always the odd year. So this year was no different. And they came in April. And you'll be pleased to know that our rating was, we retained our good rating for both of our programs. They run two audits. They treat the appraiser program separately from the AMC. You could do good on one and, excellent or poor on the other. And, but we did very well. So I was pleased with that. And just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective in that, Will actually, he pulled the last 7 back. I think it was about a week or 2 ago. He pulled the last 7 that were reported. Doesn't mean that they were done within the same period, but they were done within the last probably several months, at least within the range of the time and period that we did. And out of the 7, the last 7 that were pulled, we were the only ones with a good rating. And so the others were not satisfactory or needs improvement. And that was kind of surprising. We're starting to see a little bit of that trend. I don't know if there was some personnel that turned over in some of these jurisdictions, or maybe the review's getting a little more strict, or what's happening there. But a lot of those, they didn't fare well as well as we did, but we were able to retain our good rating. And I looked at those 7 jurisdictions because, I wanted to get sort of an idea by comparative of where we stand within those jurisdictions. And out of the 7 jurisdictions, only 2 are arranged the way that we are, aligned the way that we are, meaning multiple boards with one director. That was it was New Hampshire and Puerto Rico. They're really small markets, and so they can't justify their own dedicated director. And so then they're the ones aligned like us. I looked at the other ones, more similar markets in kind to us, and one of those was an independent agency with their own dedicated director, and the others were aligned with TREC, with their real estate commission and real estate appraiser. So vastly more resources, but still didn't fare as well as we did. So that kind of gives you an idea of the mountain that had to be climbed to get to that place. And obviously that was due to the staff. That was due to legal's efforts as well. Legal, they were especially impressed with legal. They didn't have any findings on theirs because they go through several policy statements. They go through those and look at those and evaluate against that criteria. One of those is enforcement, and there was no findings there for legal. So kudos to legal and to our staff as well. So Will as well, digging in there, very thorough, and that reflected in our rating. And so very grateful to their efforts in that regard. Any questions on the review?
No, this is one of the points. That's really great news, and so thank you all for your hard work and your dedication there. That's fantastic. So,
and thank y'all for your support in that process. I understand, you're doing the reviews, you're looking at the legal report, so it's a full effort from everyone collectively, and that includes the board. So thank you for your efforts as well in that regard. All right. RFP expert reviews. For those that might be listening, RFP is a request for proposal, and requests for proposals are one aspect of our contract process for how we procure vendors. And those vendors in this case would be our expert reviewers for our legal report. And so in that vein, you do have 4 documents that were provided by Mr. Kevin McGuigan and also Randy Button, and I'll invite whoever they want to put to the podium to sort of elaborate on that.
Good morning, commissioners and state administrators. That is great news that we were well reviewed by the ASC, and I mean that sincerely. I appreciate the effort and the systems that you all have in place. I have been on, it's not my first time up here, and I would like to kind of conclude. I think we talked last time about how this was dragging on. I think we have found some common ground, or hopefully some common ground, where we can conclude this discussion on complaint reform. Per my discussions with peer appraisers and Mr. Kopacek, I think the best way forward at this point is to propose a standardized assignment conditions to state expert reviewers. For those that do not know the term assignment conditions, the Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal defines it as a law, regulation, guideline, or other conditions that can affect the scope of work of evaluation or review assignment. For this situation, the assignment conditions will provide a guideline for reviewing appraisals that come through the TREC. we would like to standardize the state review process to attempt to eliminate as much subjectivity as possible. My peer Randy Button, who specializes in appraisal review, will speak more to the specifics of the review document we have proposed. Mr. Button's background is one as a full-time appraisal reviewer. He has been hired by TDOT to write their appraisal review documentation and process. He teaches Appraisal Institute classes on the topic of appraisal review. He's a former member of the commission. He has a business with 3 MAI designated employees that review a huge volume of appraisals for lending institutions and condemning authorities. And we believe that if we standardize the review process, the RFP process will follow or will fall in line. We believe that if the standardization occurs, it will attract more reviewers who will be able to better understand their expectations and time commitment. Also, Mr. Button pointed out that the standardization of the review process could be applied to the review of new appraisers' experience logs. It would allow for consistency in reviewing any appraisal that comes through the board. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Randy to speak about the specifics of the guidelines.
And while he's coming up, you have the 4 documents that they provided. So, and I didn't change the titles on those, just enumerate them so you could find them. But so if he references those will be readily available on your iPad.
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning, Randy Button. I know most of everyone. Congratulations on the new appointment. And congratulations to the board. That's quite an accomplishment to get that good rating from the ASC. And I applaud the efforts of the staff and the board to put all that together, because they do scrutinize you quite heavily. I was telling Glenn earlier, we were talking about regulation, and one thing about appraisers, we're probably the most regulated licensed professionals in the state, because it comes from so many different areas. So it makes it tough for practitioners in our business. Kevin reached out to me a few weeks ago and asked me, talk to him about the review process. And he said he was going to make a presentation to the board. So he asked me if I would come and, or if I would put something together. So I put together a few documents, and I think he shared those with the board. And I'm basically here, I guess, to answer any questions. I don't know what you guys thought of the documents that, the 4 documents that I put forward that I thought may be meaningful to you. One was the review process. We all are familiar with the appraisal process and kind of the things that we go through on every assignment. Well, there's a similar process that needs to be followed in a review. So that 1-pager, the review process, just kind of gives the step process, a 7-step process that you should follow every time you do a review. Now, there basically is 2 kinds of reviews that can occur. One of those types of reviews is where you're only given an opinion about the quality of someone else's work, and you're not giving an opinion as to the value. So step 6 in the process is basically optional, but most of the things that are done for the board process and regulatory compliance probably wouldn't have a step 6. Now, there are sometimes clients want you to give your opinion of value. When that happens, we all know that standard 1 and standard 2 kick in, and not just standard 3 and 4. All right? So when we're talking about USPAP, most of this is, well, what do you have to do to be compliant with uniform standards? Kevin mentioned assignment conditions. So sometimes, just like appraisals, the assignment conditions change based on the intended use of the appraisal and who your client is and what the need. Why are they getting this appraisal? If it is for a bank, then additional assignment conditions are what we know as the Interagency Guidelines for Appraisal and Evaluation. The FDIC, OCC, Federal Reserve, everyone has put together an interagency document that has to be found. So if you're doing appraisal for any financial institution, then you have to additional assignment conditions that are over and above USPAP. Well, for the regulatory side, as license and certification, how does that play in? Well, you're looking at USPAP. That's the primary document. But also USPAP goes one step further and says that if there are specific assignment conditions that are necessary in your scope of work for the intended use, then those should be implemented as well. You should know those as the appraiser before you took the assignment, and you should implement those. Same way with the Department of Transportation, different set of assignment conditions. The IRS, different set of assignment conditions. So you go down the line of whoever the intended user is going to be driving you toward that. Now, you get complaints filed. Most of them are probably for financial institution work, but occasionally you may get something else. So those assignment conditions are going to come into play within your regulatory framework, if that makes sense, all right? So that was one of the documents. I just wanted to make sure that everyone have, you know, what we do in our office doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. I know some of you on the board are practitioners, you do reviews as well. One of the documents that's been kind of tried and true, let me just go back real quick. I've been doing this for a little over 40 years. I started when I was very young in college doing appraisal work. The last 20 of those years have been primarily focused on review work. And that's varied from right-of-way acquisition work to bank review for several clients. And through that, what I've developed is kind of a format that has evolved over time and has changed when USPAP changes. But I included just our personal. That doesn't mean that that's the best way to do it. I think it's kind of been tried and true. I have other reviewers across the state that do what I do. They've adopted this. It's gone through a lot of scrutiny with the regulators, with both the OCC and the FDIC. They seem to like what we do and have suggested that to their member banks. If you go back just a step further, when I was on the board, I was on the very first Real Estate Appraiser Commission. And we had a real monumental task, just to give you guys a little bit of history here, of there was no grandfathering. So I was an appraiser prior to licensing, but all I had to do was just say I was an appraiser. There was no education requirements, experience, testing, anything. There were designations from different organizations that many of us belonged to, but there were no licensing. So we had a monumental task on the board. We had to get all of these, 1,500 or whatever appraisers that were practicing prior to, many of them been practicing like me now for 40 years. They had to come in and submit their education, file an application, submit, content of their work product. So they had to get their experience, prove that they had experience doing this, and they had to take an exam. So one of the things I did was, I was asked to do by both the staff and the board, was to put together a checklist. So we had all of these hundreds of experience logs that we had to critique, go through and make sure that these people actually did have the experience that made them, that allowed them to take the examination. So put together a checklist. It was pretty rudimentary, but it followed standards. Went through all, kind of went through what should be looked at and for competent appraisal. I shared that. I was one of the founding board directors of Arrow at that time, because we actually put together Arrow because we had an Arello for real estate, and we said we need that for regulatory officials. So Arrow, we put together a group, formed Arrow, and I taught the very first class to investigators and staff members across the nation on what to look for and what USPAP meant. Here we had this document, what does that mean? How does it apply? And shared what we used here in Tennessee, I think for maybe 15 years. 15 or 20 years was that same format of checklist that we put together. And we shared it with other states implemented it as well. I'm just saying that from a history side. Let's move forward to today, where we're at today. I think consistency among the throughout the process is something that can be invaluable to the board. So that whether you're reviewing for experience credits or complaints, that there is kind of a overreaching process, all right? The only reason I put this document in here was to give you an example of what we do for our financial institution clients. It's different for other clients. Two other things that included in here. One was the appraisal review framework. This is kind of the meat behind that format, that form of appraising, or that process, that template. And it just goes through each one of the things that establishes what's, standardized content requirements and evaluation criteria for appraisal reviews. This follows USPAP and applicable federal regulations. There's an introduction section, so I've tried to compartmentalize this so that it has different sections that make it easier to kind of follow. I know it's probably more than you want, but I think it covers all the things within the review process. And it's a specific discipline. Review is its own discipline, and it's very nuanced. So I tried to break down all of that throughout the process to kind of give you some structure. I don't know if y'all had chances to look at that, but it kind of follows the appraisal process and what we're looking for as reviewers. Also, some key organizational structure I put together. This organizes kind of the checklist. It has clear citations. This is what I love, is that you can cite specifically what USPAP violation occurs if you don't put the intended use. What number is that, okay? So that kind of goes through. Also, it references the advisory opinions, and in this case, this one's done for financial institutions, so the FIREA requirements as well, okay? The dual level requirements, both content requirements, what to look for, and then how to evaluate it. As reviewers, there's this thing called reviewer bias, and this is what you don't ever want. Just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean that Will or Nelson may do it a different way, okay? My way's not always the only way to look at attacking the problem. So one thing for a reviewer side, and this works for you when you're looking at experience credits, as well as when your contractor reviewers are looking at complaint reforms, to make sure that maybe my way is not the only way to do it. So eliminating some reviewer bias. Professional formatting, in this document, use bullet points. So here's some things that implementation-wise, that this may help the board. And this is what I want to do. I want to be a value added to you. So how can this help? Well, it can help by establishing a training manual, if you wanted to do that, for your contract reviewers. It also may help with board members, especially new board members coming on and get thrown into this. Review worksheet, convert the framework we could do it into a digital format where it makes it easy to kind of go through that. Establishing quality control. That's basically what the review process is. Consistency in monitoring this and update any protocols that you may have as it comes through. As state law changes, that's another thing that appraisers in Tennessee, it's not just USPAP, it's the statute, what the law says, who can do what. Some of those things are not spelled out in USPAP. They are unique just to our state law. So those are other things that allow you to adapt and kind of frame this to make it work for you. I know it's a lot of talking, but I wanted to at least tell you the impetus behind this, where this comes from. And I heard the chairman talk about this from the review. I've talked to some others in the past as well, of having kind of a consistent formatting process. With that, I'm done. With that, questions from here?
Thank you, Mr. Button and Kevin, for your input there. Yeah, as long as I've been on the commission, we've had this discussion, and that there is maybe some need for a more standardized process with the review, and I think it would help, we talked about this last meeting, but it would help, the reviewers out, could also potentially help us out. And so I know one thing that, I guess two questions for legal is, what would the implementation of this look like? And then, is there a way that we could be provided, looks like maybe moving some sections around, but if we were actually provided the meat and potatoes of this document when a legal complaint comes through, so that way we can see the entire review without, maybe all the confidential information is on page one and we can see the actual checklist that was provided. I think that could be helpful as well, maybe helpful for you all, so you're not trying to summarize every complaint. You can actually show us what that is, and maybe that's not feasible, so.
Kind of talking about, you touched on two things, and then, of course, legal, I won't get in their territory, I'll stay in my lane. The implementation as far as on their side, if there was a work product, that's their lane, so I'll let them speak to that. But as far as, what that work product would look like and what the things that were suggested, if you were looking to do that, how we would do that would, we would form a committee. That committee, just like what we did with the with our recent course we did with, you remember Ms. Bond's course, we'd form a committee, we'd authorize that committee, the chair would call for a vote on that regard, authorize that committee, and then that committee, when there's a need to vote, could just call a meeting. They would let me know, hey, look, the chair of that committee would call a meeting, and they would just be prior to this meeting, so that they would be the 9 o'clock slot, and then like before, the full board meeting would meet at 10, so no one's traveling separate times to do that. And then they work out the details of that in that framework. And so it's basically a work group, and then they would bring a work product to the board for additional input and eventually adoption. And so, we're not from what I heard, I don't see anything as far as redoing the complaint process. So I don't see it appears that we're just looking for a standardization of the review process itself. And so, I do appreciate that we sort of narrowed the scope down, so something we can wrap our hands around. So then the committee's work would be limited to that, and that would be something that you could hand, if there was a work product or a standardization of that review process. Obviously, any CG that was hired as our contract reviewer would be able to implement that. They'd be able to make that adjustment. So it'd just be them just basically adjusting their workflow. Now, the implications of that, outside of that, I'll let legal see if there's anything that they see or that they're aware of, because I don't work that side of the shop.
Can I add one thing to that? And I think one thing too is, I'm sorry. I think one thing also would be that it would allow you to have what your expectations of scope of work is in your RFP process. So when you are hiring these contract reviewers, that they have some idea of what their scope of work is to perform, and by doing that, you're going to get more competent and more complete a work product.
And so what I'm hearing is just this. I don't see any changes in the process. What I hear is just a standardization for our expert reviewers to consider and to implement, when they're doing their review work. Is that summarize that? I mean, roughly, but aptly.
Yeah, and Randy brought up a good point, too. It'd be helpful in the experience interviews if we could actually even provide this document. It's like, hey, this is what our reviewers use on the back end, if you ever, because the way that I always approach it, I say, hey, these are the complaints that we see, and so we're going to look at these areas of your report, and we're going to talk about these. And so, this is the form that the reviewers use if you were to ever get turned in. And so here's what it would look like based on this. Here's the changes that could or should be made. And so I think that would be helpful for us as well.
And obviously, legal's riding shotgun with us the whole time. So if we got into territory that, unintended sort of consequence or territory that we had not anticipated, we want to keep that committee focused on their task. We don't, so, and I think if that was to be their task, I think it would be, they'd have plenty to do, You know what I mean? Because it's going to take some time to work out those details for them to actually produce a work product that the board themselves could later then consider. Did legal have any comments?
Yeah, and just to circle back to your question in the beginning about providing the reports to the commission. So technically, those are attorney work product. So providing them to the commission would waive that privilege and make them available to the public. So that's just something you need to consider.
I just got a quick comment, and I just want to thank Mr. Button for being here, considering he's one of the founding fathers of this whole organization, commission. So thank you, Mr. Button, for your presentation. That was very helpful. I think it would be helpful for our new commission member if Mr. McQuiggan would come back up and just give us a quick synopsis of what this is even about. I could see, coming as a new commission member, you may not be aware of what's going on, and so I think it'd probably be a good, just if you could just summarize this really quickly as to why we're even having this discussion, that'd be great.
Sure. The basis of the reform or my attempt to have complaint reform was to put a filter on egregiously frivolous complaints. And that is when you go to an appraisal and someone makes a complaint for some reason that is just absurd. That doesn't matter. It brings on a full USPAP review of your appraisal. And so that was the initial request. And essentially, we have amended this process. That is not so, that has its problems, and I understand them. Define what is a frivolous complaint is hard. And then, there are some filters maybe that are already in place. What we have found through kind of analyzing the process is the best way forward that is something actionable is to standardize the review process. Also, another point of reform or attempted reform was that the state was not did not have a lot of applicants for the review process to be a state reviewer. And so we would like to get more reviewers, or quite honestly, in my opinion, better reviewers. And I don't know these reviewers, to be quite honest. They're held confidentially, so I don't know who these people are. But I have experience where I wish they were better. And so that is the background, in my mind, of where we've been and kind of where we are now.
Thank you, Mr. McQuiggan. I appreciate that.
Any further questions? You ought to
Anybody
see
have
that
any
picture
comments,
too
or-
when he founded Arrow. He was wearing a periwig and cutting the tape. You know what I mean? So I was like,
Well, I don't know where we go from here, but I would, I don't know if I make a motion or not, but maybe a motion to form a committee.
yeah, that would be the
to review
extent of
this.
any action at this point, because there's really nothing further we could do. And then once, if you were to, and thank you for that motion, once we form the committee, just like before, it's not automatic. It's not that you have to meet every single meeting. It's as business or would require. As you digest that, then you'd have to select the chair of that committee, and then that chair of that committee would call the meeting. They would reach out to me and say, hey, look, we want to discuss X. Well, obviously, in keeping with the Sunshine Laws, then they would convene that committee, or they would just take off from there. So that way you're not constantly giving authorization to this committee every step. They meet when they have work to do. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up on one thing? I know you get a motion getting ready to come.
Sure.
There was something you brought up I thought was real important, and that's through your experience review process. One thing you really want to do is you want to kind of educate these candidates that are coming through and make sure that they understand the standard that they're held to. And this is where the consistency among you as board members who are kind of tasked with this could create consistency between everyone and knowing, and I can tell you, being a reviewer, if I don't have a checklist to go by, I can't, even though I've done it for many years, I can't remember everything, okay? And it just kind of throws things back at me, gives me a guide to look for in the content of a report. All right, so that's important. So just having that consistency, and I know at the end of the day, you just want to be, you're an educator. You're telling these candidates what your expectations are and what needs to be done to deliver a quality work product.
I was going to say, thanks, Randy, for putting this together. I certainly find it beneficial from an experience review process, because I'm not a reviewer, so I don't know these checklists. My question, I guess, for the organization is, when a review assignment is accepted for complaint purposes, is the reviewer provided anything, or are they just given a free rein?
The reviewer is provided the complaint, the appraisal, and a response, and then the reviewers have a template that is typically used when they return their reviews.
Gotcha.
So other than maybe potentially looking at replacing that template that's being provided, nothing else would necessarily change with the process, from the way I understand it. Is that correct?
That would be in the committee's discretion, whatever they're looking forward to changing going forward.
So that's that's why it's really important for the committee, because you're the expert reviewer. Excuse me, you're the experts in this case, and so you would have to drive that initiative. Obviously, staff would support along the way where we could, but ultimately that you'd be in the driver's seat as to making those determinations. So we do have a motion, and I tell you what. If we can maybe just wrap it in one, if it's okay with you, if you want to have some discussion about it, and then obviously you're entitled to do whatever you want with your motion, but if we can wrap it in one, and then convene, a motion be to form a committee, but then who would chair that committee as well, and who would sit on it? So maybe some discussion about that, since we have the motion on the floor.
Before we get into that, I'd like one question for you, Glenn, and legal. Mr. Button said, I guess, when they began, when he founded, or when he was on the first commission, that they sort of, Mr. Button formulated a review process for experience reviews. Do you know when and what the reason was as to why we sort of lost contact with that process? I know that when I came on, I was asked to review, and I'm not a review appraiser, but in doing these reviews, I've like Brett, sort of looked at what we started, what were the major complaints usually that roll in, and sort of started hammering those a little bit on the experience review process. But I was wondering if there was a specific reason we sort of got away from that structured review process from the experience reviews standpoint, or if it was, it just got lost along the way. I was just wondering if there was a specific reason.
Yeah, I don't have the context for that. However, one of the benefits of having other boards is you can see some of these things work out in different forms in other areas as well, and you see that consistency. What I have noticed is that, I'll give you a good example, is land surveyors, they use a course list, and it's not a policy, it's a guide. The discretion belongs to the board, so it says it's like college coursework approved by the board, meaning the membership of the board. And so it's a guide to help expedite those applications. Like if you want, if you want to make sure you have a certain arrangement of courses, then you stamped, you're forward, you qualify, However, the problem we find that when people put together guides that are meant to aid, that sometimes they create an obstacle, because then they're treated like that's a policy, like it's a rule, and they forget that they still have discretion. So, we don't want to somehow reduce or somehow impinge upon that discretion that the board's been authorized to, because as a representative from the governor, through the executive branch, we want to make sure that we leverage that expertise and don't somehow hamstring that expertise as well. And because everyone that sits on this board in their own right are formidable within this industry and very capable of determining and evaluating that experience. And so in that regard, I think there's probably been some hesitation to do that. in some regard. And obviously, that's different than the expert review process, and so we're talking about two different animals. But since we're talking about it, I would suspect that's probably where that's coming from, just having seen that in other boards, But that's me speculating. I wasn't there. I can't tell you definitively that was the case. But that would be my caution, just based on that experience from other boards, if we do implement something like that.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if there was a specific reason.
Can I ask a question? And I don't want to speak out of turn because I know there's a motion in a second.
No, it's
so
a
I don't
discussion,
wanna-
so you're right on.
Okay, so I don't, so first off, just to give anybody else on the panel, my grandfather was on the first commission board with Mr. Button, Wendell Alexander. And so that does not qualify me, but if he can handle him, then I'm sure that was quite a time that they had back in the day. But, so I'm just trying to understand this from my standpoint of, it sounds like there's a problem with the reviewers and not the process for which they are reviewed?
No, I think there seems to be some appetite for standardization. And so there wasn't a consensus that reform was necessary. We didn't come to that consensus. There are some feelings about that. And then Mr. McGuigan aptly expressed that point of view. But in that discussion, out of that came sort of a narrowing of the scope, and then that scope now has landed on just the expert review process itself. It's just to make sure, because it's a science, but it's not an exact science. It's also, there is, to Mr. Button's point, he said there's different ways of coming to that value, all through USPAP while keeping within the confines of USPAP, but without necessarily, squeezing people into the same tube, that they can land at that same range of value all within USPAP, but come at that a different direction. So we want to make sure we don't impinge upon that, but we also account for that. And I think there's just discussion in that regard. So it's not that we don't have a consensus that, there's wholesale reform needed. I mean, after all, we just got through talking about, getting a good rating from ASC, and trust me, they deep dive in the process. They left no stone unturned, and then they turned some more, so it.
And I guess that was probably why I was is because just from the standpoint of somebody who's looking in, the public member, is that you've just gotten a great rating, and so it sounds like everything's going good, and then this looks awfully ambitious to want, I'm just trying to figure out where the problem is that apparently we're really good and we just want to get better, because I love that approach, but I'm just trying to figure out from the standpoint of where the problem was.
And that's why we have a public member. Thank you. We need that extra perspective, because a lot of folks because sometimes we get in our own silos, and then sometimes, and it's easy to do that. And so you challenge us to keep thinking and to sort of stress test our prognosis a little bit. So I think right now it's just exploratory. There's nothing, and so that's what the committee would do. They would get in there and just say, is there an opportunity to get better? So, yeah, right now, we don't see, there's no consensus. Now, there's always folks that would vary, and then, of course, Mr. McGuigan expressed that point of view. But there isn't consensus that there's just, gaping holes anywhere. I mean, I look at the industry, and comparatively, we're doing very well. But if there's opportunities to improve, then we always want to be open to that as well. And not just sort of, you don't want to just sort of get high on your own supply, drinking your own Kool-Aid. You need to sort of step out every once in a while and make sure that you're, doing right. And if you come back to your original point, or your then great, but if you see some things along the way that you can do better, then that's even better. We should be doing that. We need to exercise some professional industrial industrial sort of humility as well, and always be evaluating for opportunities. But that's really the extent of it right now. Yeah.
And I'll just talk about that a little too. So on my experience too, with the commission, some of these legal reports, commissioners in the past, there's been some maybe frustration with, hey, they cited this as a certain violation when in regard it's not. And so I think, the stance that I'm coming from is like, how do we make this process easier for everybody, where it is standardized, where they have a framework? If you're given an appraisal report and a complaint and the documentations, and it's like, hey, just tell us what you think, instead of just having a checklist. Maybe it's not a mandatory checklist, but hey, this is something that the board looked at, and you can utilize if you want. I think it would be helpful for that person, and could be helpful for us too as well. So I think that's kind of the stance that we're coming from.
Can I make one more comment? So the proposed appraisal review document that we've given, the guideline, is about 15 pages in length. And there is essentially a yes or no checkbox beside every one of these questions. And I think one question that we need to ask, if you, and yes means you're USPAP compliant, and no means you're not. The question becomes, and we've discussed this before, you can criticize every appraisal on its USPAP compliance. There is a subjectivity to USPAP compliance. Now, we live in the world, this committee lives in the world of black and white, but there is a gray scale that exists, and that is a fact. And so the question remains, and this is why I would like the standardization and why I would like the board to see the document, is if one no is checked, is that appraiser up for punishment, or is he going to be cited? And in my if you do enough appraisals and you work hard, you are going to be complained against at some point in your career. And to be punished for one no check is very punitive in my mind. And so that is one of the problems, to be quite honest, is there is a frivolous complaint made, and then there's a thorough review of your appraisal. And if one no is checked, it could potentially affect your career. And so that is what's at stake here, is not only the standardization of the process, but then how it's handled from the board's perspective. And that was back to the initial reason that we're speaking today.
So if we did form a committee, it would be kind of looking at the current process, potentially looking at this, and then making a decision if something needs to be provided, or is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, it would be as it looks right now. It would just be some standardization of the review process. That's kind of what we've been discussing. So I think that would be the scope, would be the review itself and standardization. So with that scope in view, because right now there's been nothing substantive, at least at this point, as far as the change in our process. So we're looking at the expert reviewer and then the basically a standardization of that process.
I think something too that, and Kevin brought this up, it's like, hey, now you've got this form and this checklist, and so it's going to be more scrutinized by the reviewers, and so this could be counterproductive to what he was trying to achieve. But with that being said, I don't have a position there. We've always kind of talked about that something to aid the reviewers would be beneficial. So.
Yeah. And historically, there has been discussion about that, so I don't see anything just necessarily outside of that vein. And then if we get into, and that's what the committee will work out, they'll work out the details, and that's one of the things we always do is stress test something. You get something in the mail and you build it. What's the first thing you do? You shake it to make sure it still holds up, And so then we'll stress test it, whatever it is, and then sort of game it to make sure there's not some unintended, we don't back into some territory, somewhere. And the legal will be riding there the whole time to sort of as a safety net as well. But so then that's where we're at. We're left with a committee, and then selecting who will sit on that committee. It doesn't have to be a big committee. It could be just 3 members. You need, I would suggest, an odd number, so that you have a tie-breaking vote. If we get to that point on a particular issue. But yeah, so so you want to decide how many members. If you go 5, then that's a pretty big sum of your folks, so you might just want to start with 3, and then, but you want to select who those 3 would be, and then who the chair of that would be.
Do we have any volunteers? Anybody who's interested in doing this?
I will volunteer to be on the committee. I'm not saying that this will result in any sort of change, and I don't think anyone is saying that. I think, though, as Commissioner Mansfield mentioned, that this might be a good opportunity for us to review the entire process. So I don't think the committee, if we're so choose to form a committee, has any sort of, may not result in any sort of change. It's just, I view it as just sort of exploratory to see, if there are changes that could be made that make sense.
I would volunteer to be on the committee if such committee exists.
So we've got two so far. We'll need one more.
I can be the third if so
Okay,
chosen.
that'd be great. So, in that, then we'll also, so we got a committee that's forming. We've got Mr. Pratt, Haston, and Vandever. So then you guys have to arm wrestle for chair. I'm serious. though. You
I
guys-
nominate Mr. Vandever as chair of the committee.
I thought you were going to volunteer.
Hey, that was pretty smart. See, make the motion and then, yeah. So his.
We haven't voted on this committee yet. by the way.
Yeah. We may have to caucus in the corner and then come back, right? So would you like to amend your motion to form the committee, name the members, and then who the chair is? And
Yes, I will make a motion that we form a committee to review the review process from a legal standpoint, and to the committee to include Mr. Vandever, Mr. Pratt, and myself, and Mr. Vandever as chairman.
All right. I'm just recording all that right quick. So we have a motion on the floor in that regard. Do we have a second?
Can
I'll
I
second.
say one clarification thing? I think you said the review process, and what we're talking about is the RFP process,
The
right?
RF,
Two
well,
different things, right?
not even necessarily the RFP process, because the process is the process, but yeah, as a whole, look at the expert review standardization of some sort to the, and now it could trickle into the RFP process, but that's right now not in view. I mean, but their checklist and, that process, yes, the review process itself. Yep.
I'll second.
All right, got a second from Mr. Mansfeld. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then that one's passed then. And then, so now that that committee is formed, then Mr. Vandever, just if at some point, next meeting or the meeting after, we'll call that, you and I will discuss that. I'll be the intermediary. We can't CC everybody. It would have to blind copy only, so we can't, everything has to be done in the public forum in that committee. But if separately, I can collate all of that information and channel that to decide if we in fact have enough material to discuss, and then you would be the chair, sort of presiding over that, okay? All right, very well. I think we can move on then to the legal and legal case report.
Good morning. Before I get started, do you want me to go through each closure, or would you want to vote on those as a whole? As a group, I'm sorry.
Yes, the ones, so I had some notes, and I don't know where I left them, but 5 and 6 I had were similar. I guess in the past, we voted on all that.
Sometimes we do all the close together, and then sometimes we go through them, so that's why I just wanted to see what clarification, which one you wanted to do. I can just go through each one.
Does anybody have any thoughts?
Since we have a new guy, why don't we do individually just to see the process?
Yep. Okay. Number 1 is 2025021331. This complaint was filed by the homeowner of the property appraised by a respondent. The complainant alleged multiple use PAP violations. Council referred this matter for expert review. The expert did not observe any violations of 2025 use PAP standards. As such, council was recommending closure. Any questions or discussion?
Make a motion to close.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to close case number 1.
Number 2 is 2025021881. In this, complainant is the purchaser of the property appraised by respondent. Complainant alleged multiple use PAP violations. Specifically, they allege that respondent incorrectly described the subject lot size in the appraisal. Council referred this matter for expert review. The expert reviewer concluded based on the information and timeline provided, there were no violations on the 2025 use PAP standards. As such, council was recommending closure.
I make a motion to close.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 3 is 2025020251. In this complaint was opened internally after respondent failed to file their 2024 annual transaction report. However, respondent has closed all operations. As such, council recommends closure.
I would go ahead and make a motion. Looks like case 3 and 5.
Yes.
Is that? the
It's
one?
3, 5, and 6 are all the same issue.
3, 5, and 6 are the same issue. I would make a motion to close those complaints in one motion.
Do you need to read those?
I'll read the
before
numbers
we-
in, yeah. 5 is 2025020211. 6 is 2025020221.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we'll do number 4 now, which is 2025019011. In this complainant was a potential purchaser of the property appraised by respondent. Complainant alleged respondent was untimely in submitting their final report. Respondent believes that they acted in a manner that was professional and procedurally appropriate. They acknowledge that the complainant was not their client and that they were in touch with their client at every stage. As such, council is recommending closure.
I've got a question about this one. So it says type of license appraisal management company. So the appraisal management company was,
They were filing the report against the appraiser, but they entered the appraisal management company. So technically it was under that license, but the complaint was against the appraiser that was completing the report.
gotcha. Any discussion?
I make a motion to close.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then number 7 and 8 are similar as well. So if we can I'll just group those together. 7 is 2025020231, and 8 is 2025020241. In this, again, this was a complaint opened internally after respondent failed to file their 2024 annual transaction report for the National Registry. Council is recommending for both 7 and 8 to issue a letter of caution allowing respondent 30 days to complete their panel report. And if respondent does not comply within the 30 days, council is recommending the commission authorize to issue a consent order assessing a $250 civil penalty and requiring respondent to provide proof of registration within 30 days.
So are we thinking these are appraisal management companies that are no longer operating, or?
We didn't get a response for either of these, so we're going to send out this letter, hopefully, and then that typically initiates a response more than when the complaint's open, and they can let us know if they're no longer operating or if they are operating and just failed to do it. So the letter of caution gives them that 30 days to get back to us before we move forward with a consent order. This is what we typically do in this situation.
Motion to accept the recommendation.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Number 9 is 2025016691, and this complainant is the homeowner of the property appraised by respondent. Complainant alleged respondent included inaccurate information in the report and violated multiple USPAP standards. Council referred this matter for expert review. The expert found just a few minor violations. They found respondent failed to report and analyze the subject property's sales history, and that there were just some small variances throughout the report. As such, council is recommending issuing a letter of instruction referencing the USPAP standards the expert found were violated.
Could I ask, since we have a new member, just to explain to him what the letter of instruction
Yeah.
means? Thank you.
So there are a few different types of discipline that can be given to a respondent. A letter of instruction is the lowest. We don't report it to the National Registry, and it's not technically formal discipline. Then there's a letter of warning that we do report to the National Registry. That's just a step above. Then we have a consent order, which can either assess a civil penalty, or it can require courses, education courses, or it can take as far as suspending or revoking a license. And those are all reported to the National Registry as well.
So while this looks like a lot from a violation standpoint, it really just comes down to the sales contract wasn't analyzed, which is, it's not nothing, but it's.
And the expert in their
agree.
review typically includes something that they think is appropriate, and they felt a letter of instruction was appropriate in this stance. And then the commission obviously has the availability to make it a higher, or they can just close it if they want to.
Thanks for the clarification. I
Yeah, no,
assumed-
I should have gone over that before. I apologize.
I would make a motion to accept legal's recommendation of letter of instruction.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Second.
The number 10 is 2025018251. This complaint was just filed by the other party.
Do we need to vote on the?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
You're fine, no problem. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. Number 10 is 2025018251. This complaint is related to the previous complaint you guys just voted on, and it was just filed by the other party involved. So I was just recommending closure on this one.
I make a motion, we agree with what you said.
Got a motion on the
Second.
floor and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then the next one is number 11, which is 2024062251. In this, council referred this matter for expert review. After thoroughly reviewing the information in the complaint, the expert did not think that disciplinary action was warranted. However, the expert reviewer did state that there may be a possible issue if complainant provided respondent with details of a pending contract and respondent failed to disclose this information in the report. Based on the information provided, council and the expert reviewer we're recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to USPAP Standard 15A, as well as Advisory Opinion 1 for appropriate guidance.
I will be recusing myself from this case, but question for legal, is this related to a former complaint?
Yes.
All right, could you elaborate on that former complaint?
Yeah, so a former complaint was filed by the same complainant, and it was closed after an expert reviewed that. However, the complainant filed another complaint alleging new information and providing additional documentation. So typically when that happens, if no new information is provided, then that complaint will just be closed. But because they provided new information, a new complaint is open, and we had to go out for a secondary expert review, and this was the information that the expert reviewer, this decision expert reviewer found.
Thank you. Again, I'll be recusing myself.
I will also be recusing myself from this one.
As will I, so I'll turn it over to Glenn.
I was doing my count at that point because I was like, oh, wow, we're about to lose quorum. So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good. Okay. Thank you for doing that count for me in advance. I'm not that good. Apparently this morning I had more iPads than I needed as well. I was thinking I was going to an A&E meeting instead. So anyway, all right. In that case then, with outside of those that have already accused themselves, we will need a motion to accept council's recommendation.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, it says in here, excuse me, that the complainant provided the respondent with the details of a pending contract, and the respondent failed to disclose this information. Did they not provide them the actual contract?
I think it notes if the complainant had provided this, then it would be a violation, but we don't have that information. It wasn't provided. So I think the reviewer was just noting if this had occurred, it would be a violation.
Okay,
But they
so
can't
actually-
say for sure if it did or did not.
So the respondent really had no information on a pending contract?
It was not clarified within the response or the complaint, so that's why I think the expert was noting this is a possibility, but we cannot confirm for sure if this was something that occurred. And if it's not something that they provide to us, the expert can only go off the information that they provided. I think they just wanted to note within their review. And that's why we're moving forward with a letter of instruction and not any formal discipline.
All right, I make a motion that we agree to this letter of instruction.
All right, very well. We've got a motion then to accept the letter of instruction as recommended by council for number 11. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a second from Mr. Van Dever. All in favor of those that remain, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none then, that motion was passed. Thank you.
Okay, number 12 is 2025-01-3861. And this complaint was referred from the Tennessee Office of the Attorney General Division of Consumer Affairs. The homeowner of the property appraised by respondent initially filed their complaint with Consumers Affairs, who felt it felt better under our jurisdiction, so they referred the matter to the commission. I referred this matter for expert review. The expert did find multiple violations within the report. However, this respondent at the last meeting had a consent order executed for an appraisal that was issued around the same time as the report in this complaint, with pretty much the same violations found within that previous expert review. And they had executed a consent order requiring them to complete the 4-hour course missing explanations and the 4-hour course residential report writing versus form filling, and they have completed those courses. Just based on the similarities of time and violations found, I was recommending just closing this one with a letter of instruction.
So this was filed prior to them taking this education?
Yes. Yes. It took a little bit to get to us because they filed with the Consumer Affairs. Consumer Affairs referred to us, then it went out through a review, so it kind of went through a different process than it typically does. But this report was issued around the same time as the one from the last meeting with the similar violations, and they have completed those coursework now. Someone has to turn off, I think.
I don't have a strong feeling about this, but I do feel like they've taken the courses, they've, from the same time period. This just seems to be a confluence of, timing. So I would just move to close, or make a motion to close.
This seems a bit sloppy and also maybe a pattern of behavior. I mean, obviously, the two things occurred around the same time period, but this is, if this was put into the proposed checklist, there would be quite a few checks, I think. So, nothing else, it's pretty sloppy.
Yeah, I would agree that if this had come post this education, that we wouldn't be considering a letter of instruction. or
I agree
closure.
with
So
that. It's
that's-
just the timing and the similar violations from the last report since we just issued a consent order, but I'm open to whatever the commission thinks is appropriate.
We do have a motion on the floor, correct? Yes.
Yeah. I make a motion to close.
I make a different motion to accept the recommendation of letter of instruction.
Might need help with that.
Got one motion on the floor, so, but we'll have to treat them both separately. So let's start with the motion to close. Unless you want to withdraw, then we'll just vote on that, and then we'll get to the motion of letter of instruction, accept council recommendation. No, so yeah, that would fail. So yeah, do we have a second? Say, hey, you're pulling some heavy weight already. All right, so that motion fails, and we can move to Mr. Van Dever's motion of letter of instruction to accept council's recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. We got a second from Mr. Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, then that one was approved. Thank you.
Okay, number 13 is 2025-01-6551. In this complaint, alleged respondent, a licensed real estate agent, was advertising for unlicensed appraisal services. Respondent clarified that it was not their intention to offer appraisal services to consumers. They say their intent was to offer comparable market analysis aimed to provide a potential seller with a rough estimate of a price point their home could be advertised for. Respondent states they did not advertise ascribing value to a property, nor did they complete an appraisal on any property. Council was recommending issuing a letter of warning reminding respondent the regulations pertaining to unlicensed activity.
Do we have any details of what they were actually doing?
They didn't provide the actual advertisement. Basically, they just allege that they were advertising that they can tell them what their home should be listed for. And also, the respondent notes that they took it down immediately upon receiving the complaint.
Hey, for clarification, I think you verbally said letter of warning, and then the recommendation says letter of
Yeah,
instruction.
I'm sorry, I meant to say letter of instruction. If I said letter of warning, yes, letter of instruction.
Any discussion, thoughts?
I make a motion to accept the legal's recommendation.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, number 14 is 2025022271. And this complainant is the homeowner of the property appraised by respondent. The property was appraised for potential sale by complainant. Complainant alleges respondent included inaccurate information in the report and violated multiple use PAP standards. Council referred this matter for expert review. The expert found there appeared to be a few factual discrepancies that were corrected in a final report. However, they found that the initial discrepancies violated use PAP standard 11C. However, in the opinion of the review appraiser, the violation did not cause the overall report to be misleading and not meaningful. Accordingly, council was just recommending closing this with a letter of instruction.
Motion to accept the recommendation.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we're back. Number 15 is 2025005761. And this complainant is the homeowner of the property appraised by respondent. Complainant alleged multiple use PAP violations. Council referred this matter for expert review. The expert found that there were a few areas where the reported information appears incorrect. However, in the opinion of the review appraiser, these items have not caused the overall report to be misleading or not meaningful. Accordingly, council was also recommending issuing a letter of instruction to close this complaint.
Discussion?
I make a motion to accept the recommendation.
Recuse.
Okay, I've got a motion on the floor.
Just for discussion purposes, this one seems closable, if anybody's open to that.
I'm also fine if you guys want to vote to close it and whatever the commission thinks is appropriate.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor. Second.
Second.
Okay. I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries.
That's the end of the legal report.
Thank you.
We're still in the legal section. We just wrapped up the legal case report. Before we move on to new business, did legal have any other comments or anything related that they'd like to add? No, okay. Thank y'all. Appreciate your hard work in that regard, as reflected both in our recent review, but then also in the summary as well. You can tell that you really hit those points, so thank you very much for digging in. All right, new business.
I would like to make a comment. I have been, is my microphone on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've been asked by one of my peers in West Tennessee to bring this up a few times, and I kept forgetting, but she has been concerned with the verbiage in the license limit law being capped at $1 million for certified residential. And her concerns are that since COVID and with values going up, $1 million house is not near as uncommon or as complex as it used to be. And as food for thought, she wanted me to present, could the verbiage be modified to either raise the limit or eliminate it? Because $1 million house we used to never see them in West Tennessee, and now you see them fairly often. Alex can attest to that. So she just wanted me to bring that up.
Yeah, I was sitting here and both Mr. Button and Will came to my aid because I was sitting there, I was thinking, I think there's some federal requirements that are informative to that. And so, though, whatever limits that exist are not outside of, they're not outside of our, excuse me, our statute is in line with those federal requirements. So it would have to be some adjustment at that level for that to trickle down. So, but I understand where you're coming from, but there's, when it comes to residential, I believe it's unlimited, but then the $1 million cap that you were discussing earlier, I think that's, I don't have the limits in front of me, but I'm pretty sure those square with that, which is in alignment with ASC flowing out of the Appraisal Foundation, well, not Appraisal Foundation, but ASC through their requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, those are, I mean, it's a challenge, but also sort of a luxury because of the strict federal requirements. One of the luxuries is there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. But then the challenge is conforming to that all the time. You know what I mean? Making sure, and that's where the challenge is. That's where the work it really sort of takes off, and for us becomes the challenge is just and as they interpret that, some of that's not up for interpretation when it comes to limits or whatever. It's just it is what it is. Requirements like a QE. That's just it is what it is. The hours for experience. The subjective part comes. When we were talking about the experience reviews and those type of things, but when it comes to the qualifying experience or the requirements for entry into those various levels, and then the limits within those levels, that's all federally regulated. So it's but it's good for not just our public member, but then others that are outside looking in. Because there is a lot more discretion in some of the other boards, and so folks come to the appraisal or to the Real Estate Appraiser Commission thinking that there's a little bit more flexibility in that regard. But it's kind of every once in a while, it's probably a good idea just to sort of underscore that and highlight that for those that would be listening in, or just the general public at large, that aren't aware of what that entails and what those are. So thank you for bringing that to to the forefront. And you can tell your friend now that you delivered, so you're not in trouble now. So that's good. So thank you, and also thank you for representing, in a sense. You do have a constituency too, and on some level. I mean, ultimately, that belongs to our elected officials, but it does trickle down. You're in the industry, you understand, what those concerns are, and so you want to bring those forward and make sure that we bring those to bear and have those discussions as necessary. Ms. Tuck, did you?
Yes, we've all heard rumors about a bias class that may be required by, is it January of 2026? But we haven't heard any definitive information.
And that's been on purpose because that's coming soon. What was that? Yeah, and so and Will was saying that's coming soon. We're working on that. You'll probably get. I would encourage anybody that wants the updates on that to sign up for our e-notifies. If you go to, I think it's notified at tn.gov. You can do that there, or you can just go to core.tn.gov, and there's a place to sign up there, or in our contact page, if you go there, there's a place that says get notified at the drop down. And so anyone that's listening, you can sign up there, and then you'll get those releases. But some of that too has been waiting on a consensus from the industry and some interpretations by the AQB. I would much rather be right than fast, and so I'm waiting to. There's some chatter between fellow regulators, and so the implementation of that. And the other thing too is just a practical concern too is I want more courses, because you go and send out a blast to go take these courses and you don't have all the courses, as well for a place to go, then that creates problems as well. And so, we're hoping that we'll get a couple more in the pipeline, but I'd say in 2 to 3 months or something, you'll get a notify with all of those details on there.
So is there a required date that class has to have been taken?
So the class is related to the 2026 AQB criteria. That's going to go into effect next year. So it is a valuation and bias appraisal course that would be required for all licensees at some point. And so whenever we send out the information related to the updates from the 2026 AQB criteria, we'll provide that information to you all. But I think the issue right now, if I'm not mistaken, is we don't have course providers for the course yet. And so, or I'm at least not aware of it. And so until we have course providers for said course, we wouldn't be able to offer it. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do. But it is coming from the AQB.
Yeah.
That's what the course is talking about. And if you guys remember, I believe this draft of the AQB has been coming for at least a couple of years now. So it is not something that's just like new. So we don't have any updates related to that other than it will,
But we will soon, yeah.
yes.
Thank you very much, Ann. That's very helpful. And the course, like, for example, you have an 8-hour course that everybody has to take at least once, right? It's just like USPAP. You take the 15, then you take the 7 after that, refresher. It's like that. You have the 8-hour course, and then you have the refresher, every biennial renewal thereafter. And so we have some 7-hour courses. We've even got one, maybe 2 4-hour courses. We don't have an 8-hour course. And so, before we start begging for those, or before we don't want to sort of prime the pump and have all these inquiries coming in, or folks a bunch of folks take the 7-hour course when they need the 8. See what I mean? Like, and so so we need a bridge for that too. If we, so it's all of those type of things. I've already got an FAQ, sort of like bullet points addressing some of those issues. It's a rough draft, and so I'm waiting for some of those things to align, and I'm just trying to get a clear directive too on some of those finer points too, about when would you take those courses, at what point, and so anyway, so we're working that out, and we're really close. So I'd say probably within a couple months we'll be getting that notice with all the rundown and the breakdown of all of that. Yep.
Right, so based upon the inclusion of the course, if you guys, I think I presented a rulemaking package to you guys earlier, and it has like a rearranging of the amount of hours that would be required by individuals because it incorporates that course now. So that is, I think, more specific information that like related to it. So, but as Glenn stated before, there is the 8-hour course, and that I believe is going to be the one that's required at the onset of the beginning for everyone, and then afterwards it would be, I think. Oh, so yes, the first time the appraiser completes the course, it must be 7 hours. And then there would be the 1-hour exam course, but then after every 2 calendar years thereafter, the course must be 4 hours. So at the initial onset, it's 8, and then afterwards for renewal will be 4.
So that's calendar years, not renewal cycle.
So every 2 calendar years, which is the same, I think it's per renewal cycle is what you would end up doing, since that's our renewal cycle.
So theoretically, if you were renewing in March, you need to be aware that, this starts in January and.
Correct. So, but as soon as we have more information related to the course, including, course providers and to those types of things, we'll let individuals know. So anyone beginning, January 1, 2026, right now, moving forward, that would be something that would apply.
You said that the initial course will be 8 hours, and that thereafter you will be required to do a 4-hour update on every cycle that
Yes.
you're.
Yes.
Okay.
And there is a test with it, a 1-hour test?
The 8-hour course has a test. The 4-hour course, I do not believe has a test.
Okay, because you said 7-hour and then you said 8 hours.
Yes, so it's 7 hours plus the 1-hour exam,
Okay.
which would make it 8 hours. And then afterwards, the refresher, I guess it would be similar to the USPAP course that you take, is 4 hours
Okay.
and doesn't have an examination requirement.
Excellent. Any further discussion there? With Arrow, did we have confirmed attendees?
I tell you, you guys are great. I mean, I literally, it's like Brandy March over there, Arrow. Maybe Brandy Button would let her know, because him being the founding member and father over there, he probably kind of nudged her. But I opened up the email today, and then we had the agenda, so that's what I was waiting on. We already voted to send Ms. Tuck. You guys are way ahead of the curve. And then an additional individual, if that may want to go, if there was any interest. And so that's already been authorized. Now, afterwards, if one of our members tells me they would like to go, we can add them to that memo, but we haven't circulated that memo yet. Matter of fact, I was just talking to Ms. Griffey today and discussing that travel authorization in an email I sent to her and forwarded to her. So it's not too late. We haven't written the memo yet to circulate that, but right now I suspect it's Ms. Tuck. And then it just occurred to me that Ms. Holcomb may go too, and I didn't introduce her. Shame on me. So Ms. Holcomb is our new admin manager. And so if you can just wave to everybody there. Heidi, I forget that you guys weren't aware of that she has left, right? That she's moving on to bigger, better things, I guess. But no, she's her husband is he's in the military, and we knew it was going to be temporary, and at some point that he would get sort of restationed somewhere else. And so she played a very important part of just sort of providing that stopgap for us as we were in transition and a new season. And we're so grateful to her, and she did so much, and we miss her, wish her the best. But she's now, and then he was recently promoted, and as a result of that, will be potentially moving soon. She's still in the area, but she's just supporting, helping sort of. She's got one more at home, so gonna play mom for a while and play Army wife for a while, and then see where they end up. But it was just the timing was right for her, and so we celebrated with her. But I forget we haven't rolled it out to all the boards. I think A&E they knew about it just because they had a board meeting like right after that we made that announcement. But you guys were not aware. So Heidi's no longer with us, but still in the area. And now Ms. Holcomb has stepped into that role, and she's been with Commerce and Insurance Reg Boards for a couple years already. And so she already knows a lot about what we do already. She's just having to put on a real estate appraiser cap, whereas before she worked with some other boards. But so we look forward to her contribution in the years ahead, and I'm very grateful to have her. So, but yeah, so she'll probably be going with Miss Tuck as well in my stead. So you ladies, enjoy that, and it's Atlanta. It's not going too far, I don't guess, but Buckhead, I think, is where they're at. So if anyone else expressed some interest, but the board already authorized one extra board member if one board member wanted to go. They already decided that they voted for it. Right? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Anna. But yeah, you would have to let me know today because we are going to be circulating that TA. So just after the fact, you can let me know. So anyway, we'll be doing that. So, yeah.
Just one quick thing. I've known several people seeking CG lately and several people becoming trainees, and just want to thank William Best. He's been very helpful to those individuals, and appreciate your efforts and all that.
Yeah, thank you, William. We certainly appreciate him. I've described it as a compliment, but I've described it as ruthless efficiency, and so but it's certainly it's a compliment. It's intended to be. He's very good about cutting out the fat and moving things along and helping our folks get where they need to be and connect those dots. Because you come into a fairly regulatory system, you have a lot of questions. There's grids and flows and everything else, and that's why too. Circling back to our point with the new course, I want to see if we can distill that down and clarify that. And so I've been stress testing some other announcements, because I want to make sure when we roll that out, we're ready and people have the things that's foremost on their mind. We'll lead with that and that notify. Yep, and that should be soon. Thank you. All right, anything for a new business? All right, then we can move on to public comment. Do we have anyone online? Ms. Griffey, do we have anyone signed in there? Anybody here as well? Okay. All right. No further public comments. Then, Chair, it's up to you to adjourn us if you like. We don't need a motion. It's just you gavel us out if you're ready.
All right. All those in favor, leave.
All right. Thank you. We're done.